I always say that these What's New videos are my favorite to produce, and that's doubly true for the annual Adobe Max editions, which is what I'm going to cover here. Earlier today at Adobe Max 2025, we announced major updates to all Lightroom surfaces. And because I focus on the Lightroom ecosystem, I'm going to show you everything that's new in the Lightroom for Desktop version 9.0. This is a massive update. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited to show you what we've added is that there are several new features that have been long requested by you. Now, because there are a bunch of things to cover, I'm going to give you a high-level overview of each of the major new features. But don't worry, because over the next few days, I'm also going to share additional deep dive videos for some of the more robust new features added to Lightroom 9. So it's a good idea to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. All right, let's dive in. All right, so I usually start these What's New videos the same way. That's to remind you to go to the Creative Cloud desktop app on Mac or Windows, and from home, click on Updates, and be sure to install Lightroom 9.0. Because this is an Adobe Max cycle, you'll probably have a bunch of updates for whichever apps that you have in Creative Cloud. So just be ready to download all of those. But for the purposes of this video, you'll want to make sure you have Lightroom 9.0 installed. All right, so the first little update, but I'm excited about it. I think it's cool. The Lightroom app icon has been updated. It has a little bit of a chunkier typeface to it, so it improves readability. I think it looks cool. I'm excited about it. Now let's go to Lightroom 9.0. And this is another quick thing, but I want to highlight it. It's great, especially if you are new to Lightroom. If you click on the contextual help button up here, you now have these quick tip videos that'll help you get familiar with the app. These videos have audio and closed captioning, so you can just watch it and it'll just give you a great head start to the app. So let's start with the biggest update to Lightroom 9.0, and that is assisted culling. Assisted culling is basically a new feature that will help you take a very, very large group of images and identify which are your selects and which are your rejects. And we do that so that you can take a batch action to the selects and the rejects. So you might have 100 photos and 75 might be selects and the 25 remaining will be rejects. And you'll want to say, okay, I want to apply, say, 4 stars to the selects and a pick flag, and I want to apply a reject flag and 1 star to the rejects. So that's what culling is in a nutshell. Now, for the most part, this current version of culling is primarily trained for portrait photos, headshots, graduation shoots, photos of your families. That's primarily what it's for, photos of people. And that's not to say that you can't try it with, say, your bird photos or other types of photos, but your mileage will vary because, again, this is primarily trained on these types of photos. And I'll show you how it works right now. So you can see here, we have a bunch of photos from this fashion shoot. I did not take these photos, which is probably no surprise to anyone who watches the videos on my channel. But this is from a Mestiza fashion shoot. And the photographer, as you can see, took a bunch of photos, way more photos that I have in this album, just because I don't need the thousands of photos that he took. But you can see how we have photos of this model wearing various outfits throughout the shoot. Each one is a different look. So what I want to be able to do is identify from this shoot which are my selects and which are my rejects. So to do that, you'll find assisted culling is parked at the top here of the photo panel. You just need to click on this disclosure triangle, and here it is. Now, there are 2 quick things that I want to highlight before we dive into the feature. The first is you'll see there are 2 tabs, Cull and Stack. Now, Stack is very exciting. This is auto stacking. This is a feature that I know, especially Lightroom Classic users who have switched over, have been asking for a long time. But it's not just the auto stacking that you had in Lightroom Classic. It's even better. I'll show that to you in a few minutes. But the point I want to make is that stacking is only available with your cloud library. Because Local does not support stacking, you won't have the functionality there. The other point that I want to make is that this feature is currently in early access. What this means is that the feature is ready for you to use, but we really would love to hear from you. We would love your feedback to know what's working about the feature, what isn't working about the feature, because I promise you, we are still very much working to improve this for you. And so while it's in early access, Please do be generous with your feedback. Let us know what you think about it. Now, if this is your first time expanding assisted culling, you're going to see this tutorial. Basically, if you click on this early access badge, this is the tutorial that you'll see when you first expand it. I highly recommend not skipping it. But if you do click on close, as you saw, you can re-access it by clicking on early access again, and there's your tutorial. Now you'll see that there are a few sections here in the assisted culling panel. This first section has your select models, and this is where you will use these models to mark images as select and reject. After that, you'll see the reject models. These are meant to automatically mark certain images as reject, things like documents and receipts, misfires, and exposure issues. And this is actually good because it allows me to illustrate. If you hover over any of these, you'll get these mini tool tips. So it'll give you an idea of what each of these models can do. Below that is the selects bucket, the rejects bucket, and all. So once you start scoring images, they'll fall in either selects or rejects. And of course, you can see all of them here. And then finally, the whole point of culling is that you will organize your photos into selects and rejects so that you can apply a batch action to them, basically applying metadata to them or adding them to specific albums. So to start, the first thing you need to do is enable any one of these models. So I'm going to start by clicking on subject focus. When I do, you'll see after about a second, this scoring progress area appears. And so what's happening is Lightroom is applying scores for all 6 of these models to each of the images automatically. It's not like you have to click on each one of these to get it to score for that respective model. We're doing it at the same time. Now you can see it's blazing through pretty quickly. Out of 268 photos. It's going to take about, I would say, a minute, a little bit over a minute. So I'm going to speed through this part. And we are now done with scoring. You can enable multiple combinations of models. So you can have subject focus, and you can say also automatically reject images with exposure issues, for example. But let me explain how this works in terms of the images being sorted in select and reject buckets. The reject models is probably the most straightforward. Basically, you're telling Lightroom to automatically mark any image that has exposure issues or misfires or our documents and receipts as rejects. So if I click on rejects here, you can see that we have these images here that are underexposed, but we also have this image here in rejects as well. Why is it here? Well, you can see currently the only select model enabled is subject focus, and it's at the default position of 50. This is now where scoring comes into play, and it's important. If I select the image and then I open up the info panel, you'll see we have this new section up here called culling scores. And each image already has scores for the 3 select models: subject focus, eye focus, and eyes open. And so because I'm saying only mark images as selects if it has a subject focus score greater than 50, this one has a subject focus score of 46, so it didn't meet the threshold, therefore it's marked as a reject. And so I can go into this image here and I can zoom in and I could say, no, you know what? This is okay. This is sharp, and I want to override it, which is a really important point that I want to make. This is AI powered, and we've done extensive training, but use it as kind of like an initial guideline. So use the model to assign scores to your images and then go through your rejects and just make sure that you truly have the images you want to keep, and then the ones that are marked as reject, those are correct. So I wouldn't recommend just taking it at face value. Go through. I don't know any photographer that would just take this kind of thing at face value, but it does speed up the process big time. So let's go back here. I'm going to go to grid and I'm going to increase this subject focus score because I actually want to see the sharpest images. So I'm going to bring this up to say 90. And now you can see that more images move from selects to rejects over here. Another thing that I want to do is enable the eyes open model. Basically, I want to mark any images with the eyes closed as reject. I also have a few sub options here. I can auto reject photos without people's eyes in it. So if we can't see eyes in the photo, just reject them. Or if Lightroom just can't tell if the eyes are open, just reject those too. All right, let's move this to the top over here. You can see that each of the images, depending on which bucket they're in, have an icon. This is a reject icon. When I click on select here, you can see it has a select badge over there. But let's go back to rejects for a second. And let's use this first image as an example. You can see if I open it up and I zoom in, it's quite sharp, like it looks good. But because it has a subject focus score of 88 and I have the limit at 90, it fell off. And so you can say like, you know what, I actually want this. Well, it's easy to override Lightroom's scoring. So here you can see if I click on this icon over here, you have the option to override here. So if I click on mark as select, that's going to move it automatically to the select bucket, even though it doesn't match the criteria that you set here at the model level. And so this is the image that I just overrode the score. And you can see here at the top, it says marked as select. All right, so again, what I would recommend, once this is done, go through here and review these images and override any ones that you think should be selects. Of course, you could override a select and mark it as a reject. Like, you know what, maybe this one, you're not feeling it. So you can just click this again and mark it as a reject, and that'll move over. Now that you have your images sorted as select and reject, this is what I consider to be the whole point of culling. You want to go ahead and apply batch actions. So once you do that, you can see two sections here. You can apply respective actions for selects and for rejects. So for selects, let's say I want to give it a rating of 2 stars. Another thing I can do is add it to an album. And one of the cool things is here, I can actually create a new album on the fly. Of course, I can also apply a flag and something that I'm going to cover in a few minutes, a color label, which is now in Lightroom. Same thing for rejects here. I can apply a reject flag. I can give it a 1-star rating, and I could mark it as red. And so now what I'm going to do is click on OK. And you can see here, Lightroom has automatically applied the metadata based on the select and reject criteria. So now I'm free to go ahead to the filter bar, for example, and say, show me all images with a red color label. And here are all of my rejects. Or more importantly, show me all images with a pick flag. And here are all of my selects. And so I can further refine this and get them edited and delivered to the client. So I hope you see the vast potential of assisted culling in Lightroom, especially if you are a portrait photographer and you have been looking for this kind of functionality built right into Lightroom. It's now here for you. All right, now I want to show you the stack component of assisted culling. I went ahead and cleared the all the metadata that I just applied just to make it easier to see. Remember, auto stacking is a cloud-only function, so you'll expand assisted culling and you're going to click on stack. Now, just like with assisted culling here, you have a tutorial that I recommend you try out. Of course, if you close it and you want to get back to it, you could just click on early access again to see the tutorial. So taking this Mestiza fashion shoot again, why would we want to auto stack? Well, I know for me, primarily, you can see that there are these different shoots, like the model is wearing different outfits. Not only is the model wearing different outfits, but also they're different types of photos. Some of the images are full body shots, some of them are tighter crops. And so I would want to be able to quickly stack these into groups just to make it easier to organize and to find the images that I'm looking for. Now, unlike culling, where I mentioned how this is primarily trained on portraits, I personally have had great success using auto stacking with my bird photos, where I take thousands of photos and it does a great job of stacking them together by one of 2 different variables. The first you can see here is by time. This is not AI powered. Basically, when you click on this, Lightroom uses the image information to automatically stack based on how much time elapsed between each photo. So the default value is 1 minute, and you can see here that it automatically created these stacks. I can either bring it to the left here and really restrict it, so like show me photos taken very quickly in between each other or within a greater time frame. So depending on what your needs are, you'll adjust this accordingly. The other option is AI powered, and it's called Visual Similarity, and this is awesome. Now, like the call section, Visual Similarity will require Lightroom to analyze the photos, but Unlike Cull, when we do go and apply scores in the Cull section, it's not checking for visual similarity. So what does that mean? Well, if I click on visual similarity over here, you'll see that Lightroom will start scoring again, just like before. And so just remember that depending on which section you are, you might have to rescore again. And there's an important point that I want to make about scoring. Once Lightroom scores the image, it doesn't have to rescore it unless we update the models, in which case we will have to rescore. The only other time that we will rescore in an album is if you add new images to that album, then we have to score it. Unless that image was in another album that you scored as well. Also, you can see we're in the middle of scoring right here. Let's say I go ahead and click on Cull, or I go to a different album altogether. You see that scoring stopped. But when I turn this back on, Lightroom will pick up where it left off. So you don't have to start over, which is a huge thing, especially if you are working on albums with a large amount of photos in them. All right, so here you can see that Lightroom created these temporary stacks. I say temporary because Lightroom will not do anything until you click this Create Stacks button. I want to say this up front because if you click out, like I go to Cull over here, and I go back to Stacks, you'll see that none of the stacks were created. But fortunately, like I said before, the scoring is already here, so it takes no time at all. Now, as I drag the slider to the left, the stacks will show images that have more similarity to each other. So right around here, you can see if I click on the stack badge here and I look at the thumbnails, let me make this larger. You can see here, this actually did quite a good job of showing me these are all the images of this model wearing this outfit, and they're all full body shots. Now, there's another important point to this that I want to bring up about visual similarity specifically. Not only are we stacking these images based on visual similarity, but we're also running it through a model that will help identify the best photo within this stack, which is indicated by this little landscape icon here. Now, this doesn't mean that this is the first image in the shoot. It's just the strongest image, and I'll illustrate that in a second. So once you have your stacks at whatever the desired level is here of visual similarity, again, click on Create Stacks, which I'm going to do now. And now Lightroom will commit the stacks. And so let's say I go back to the stack over here. Remember, I said how the best photo is not necessarily the first one. If I scroll over, it's actually over here in the sequence. Of course, you can overwrite this if you want to change the stack cover. All you need to do is right click on the image and then select Set as Stack Cover, and it'll change to whatever you want. And so that's how you would use auto stacking by time and visual similarity. All right, as big as assisted culling is, and it is huge, for me personally, the breakout feature of Lightroom 9.0 is actually something that was added to Adobe Camera Raw a couple of months ago, and it's part of point color. I covered it on a previous video, and it's called Color Variance. Color Variance, in my opinion, is just amazing. So much credit to the developers for building this. It really is amazing. And it has a home for both the portrait and the landscape photographers. And I'll show you how you can use it for both. So sticking with the portrait theme over here, I have this photo of this surprised camper that I got from Adobe stock. Now you can see if we kind of zoom in on the model's face, there's kind of a little bit of a variance in her skin color. It's a little bit reddy in the cheeks. And so I want to be able to kind of even this out, add some harmony to the skin color. Now you might be thinking, all right, well, I know point color is in the global edit section over here, right over here. And so I'll just go ahead and click on this dropper and I'll select a mid-range color, which is what you want to do. So not the darkest red, not the brightest, but somewhere kind of a mid-range. And then I have this variance slider here. But here's the thing. The way variance works is if I drag it to the right, it's going to increase contrast within this range over here. So you can see as I drag it to the right, I mean, this looks terrible. But as I drag it to the left, it kind of decreases contrast. It brings the colors within the range closer together. And you get this beautiful uniformity in the skin. You can go all the way, but I don't recommend it. But here's the thing. It's affecting the whole image. Look at her hair. Look at her, the sleeve of her sweater. I don't want that. I only want to affect the face. And so let's go ahead here, delete the swatch, because I want to show you the real power of the color variance slider, and that is to use it with masking. So I'm going to click on the masking panel here, and Lightroom already has this powerful people masking. And so what I'm going to do is select facial skin. That's going to be my mask. I'll click on create. And now if I do the exact same thing, I'm going to go to point color, use the dropper, select a mid-range color. And when I adjust variance, you see how it's only affecting the skin. And so here, I'll just drag this to the left, right around here. And if I toggle the before and after, I mean, the change is phenomenal. Like, I think this is amazing. And I mentioned how the color variance slider has a home for both portrait and landscape photographers. So here you can see, I took this photo just a couple of days ago, and I used a polarizer filter. And so you can see, depending on how you use the polarizer, depending on the focal length of your lens, depending on the direction that you are with respect to the sun, you can sometimes get this shift where you'll get a part of the sky that's really dark blue, and it has kind of a gradient to a brighter blue. And so what if I want to kind of even this out? Well, if I follow the same principle as before, I'll go to masking, I'll apply an adaptive sky mask, and then we'll go to point color. And again, we're not going to select the darkest blue. We're not going to select the brightest blue. We're going to do something kind of in the middle, right around here. And with variance, again, if I drag it to the right, you see how it makes the dark blues darker and the bright blues brighter. But if I bring it to the left, well, now we get this beautiful, evenly exposed area. Now, one of the things that the developer of this tool told me, kind of a recommendation, is use the variance edits on its own mask. So you can see here, I made my edit. And if I want to adjust, for example, the hue, saturation, luminance, create another sky mask, go to point color, make your selection here, and now you can go ahead and adjust on this mask here. And so now overall, you can see just how much of an improvement that is. All right, so again, I've been waiting for this to release so that all of you can enjoy it and experience just how powerful it is. Again, it was in ACR for a while, but now it's in Lightroom. And for me, I use it so often, I don't remember what it's like not to have it. In fact, I recently did a video, an editing video, where I had to use Lightroom 8.5.1 because we hadn't released 9.0 yet. And I was like, oh man, I wish I had the variance slider. I really could use it right now. So I'm really glad that it's available for all of you to enjoy. Now, speaking of tools that were in ACR first, this next tool also started out in ACR, and it's now in Lightroom, and it is automatic dust removal. So here you can see a photo I took many years ago of the Space Needle. And again, especially back in the day, like you could see all this dust here. Now, it would take me a while to remove this stuff. It's a very tedious process. But with the auto dust removal, it's designed to identify and remove sensor dust and lens dust. Those are the two primary types of dust that we will attempt to identify and remove. And so to use it, you'll go to the remove section over here, and you'll see a new third distraction removal section called dust. I'm going to expand this, and then all I need to do is click on apply. And you can see here that Lightroom got rid of a bunch of dust. It also got rid of some rivets from the EMP here. I think it's called something else, like Mopop, but when I was here, it was called the EMP. I think it's like the Experience Music Project. I don't want it to remove the rivets from the panels. So there are several ways that you can delete sections that have been removed. The first is you can just select one and then press the delete key on your keyboard, and it's gone. Another way is you can click one, right click, and then select delete. And then a third way is selecting one of the dust spots and then going over here and selecting the trash icon. But there's a better way if you want to delete a bunch of these spots, or maybe not delete, but you want to restore the spots. Press and hold on the Option key on Mac or Alt on Windows, and you'll see the icon turns to scissors, and then just click and drag over all of the spots that you want to restore, and let go. Now, there are other things that you can still do here because while Lightroom does a great job of identifying a bunch of the dust, it might not find everything. So you can still access visualize spots either by clicking on this checkbox or pressing the A key. And you can adjust the threshold using this slider here. I usually keep it all the way at 100, but you can see that there still are spots that need to be removed. And so right from within this view, I can just go ahead and start removing these spots. And just to let you know, this technique here of auto dust spot and this refinement mode is using the content aware heal method. It's not using gen remove. And when you're done, you can just turn it back off and you can see just how much of a difference it makes. Like just by having this, it saved me so much time. And so I'm pumped that it's now in Lightroom. Okay, so this next new feature has been requested by users for, I think, as long as Lightroom has been around. And that is the ability to apply color labels to photos and filter by them, which is now available. So you can see here, I have this set of bird photos. If I'm in grid view over here and I hover over the bottom of the cell, you can see we now have these color labels. There are 5 colors plus none. Now you can access this several ways. You can either click on this icon that I just showed you from the grid cell. I can go ahead and click down here. I can right click on the image and then go to set color label, or I can go to the photo menu and then go to set color label and select it from here. Now you can apply a color label to an individual photo or batch photos. So like, for example, this image here of this one bird, I can go ahead and give it a red color label, but these 2 images here of the turkey vulture, maybe I'll give it a yellow color label. This heron, I'll give it a green label. The osprey will get a blue, and the anhinga will get a purple. And of course, I mentioned this earlier, but I can go to filter here, and then I can filter by a color label. So I can select any of these color labels or combinations of them and filter them. So it makes it easier to find them. Now there is a preference setting that I want to bring up because this was more or less for me during the testing of this feature. As some of you know, I'm red-green colorblind. And so it was very hard for me to differentiate some of these colors. So if you go to preferences over here, under interface, you'll see color labels background is set to subdued. There's also a vivid option. And so you'll see that the colors are much more vivid. I personally don't use this. I appreciate that it's here. It's especially helpful for me to differentiate between yellow and green, but just know that it's here. And of course, there's also the option to not have any of those kind of shaded areas and just use these little icons over here. But for me personally, I do like having the subdued option enabled. Just want you to know that it's here, but that is how color labels works. We also made a really nice improvement to the landscape mask tool. So if you remember, the landscape mask tool is similar to the people mask, except when you load landscape masking on a landscape photo, or really any photo, Lightroom will attempt to identify certain attributes. So if we look at this photo here, you can see it's got sky, it's got mountains, it's got a building. And so if I go to masking over here and I enable landscape, it's going to analyze the photo and it's going to give us the attributes: sky, mountains, architecture, vegetation. And what's this? Snow. Yep, we added an 8th attribute to the landscape mask with snow. So you can see here, if I click on it here, and I can select all of these if I want, I'll go ahead and click create. There are my masks. But if I go to snow specifically, let's say I want to brighten that up a bit, maybe get rid of that blue cast, increase the highlights, increase the whites, maybe make it even brighter. You can see what a nice improvement it makes by being able to target the snow specifically. Now, related to this, if I reset this, if I go to the presets browser over here, under premium, we also have this new adaptive landscape category. And so we have 2 different presets for each of the 4 seasons, which you can hover over And one thing to note, only the winter presets here will have the snow attribute associated to it, which kind of makes sense. The next update to Lightroom is another one of those things that people have been asking for such a long time, and that is the ability to batch rename files. So let's go back to our Mestiza shoot, and you can see how these images have file names that the photographer provided. Now let's say I want to change this. I actually want different file names. You can rename an individual photo by going to the info panel here, and you'll see under file name, there's this pencil icon. But I mentioned how this is kind of a batch file rename feature. So let's go ahead and select all of the images in this album and then click on the pencil icon. Now you can see by default, we have a few canned templates. If you drop down over here, you can see these are the ones that ship. And for each of these templates, if you click on the try dot to the right, you have some options here. But of course, because these are system templates, the only thing you can do is duplicate. But the power here is the ability to create new templates. I'm gonna go ahead and click on create new template. And you can see, similar to how you build a smart album, you can add these different variables. So let's start. I'm gonna click on add variable, and I'm gonna start by adding custom text. And so you can see the field here, custom text, and I already have Mestiza fashion shoot, so that's good. Then I'll click here, and I know that this is the 12th look or 12th outfit. So I'm gonna go ahead and type dash, I'll call it look 12, and then I'll tap dash again. And then let's say I shot with different cameras. Well, I can go to add variable, go to metadata, then EXIF, and I'll select camera. And then finally, let's say I want to make sure these are all sequenced. So I'll go to add variable, I'll go to counts, and I'll select this option here with 3 digits. And you'll notice how the save icon is grayed out. That's because I have to give this a template name. So I'll call this Mestiza look 12. And then I'll click on save. You can see here is an example of the file, and all I need to do is click on apply. And there you go. You can see that the file names have been updated, and now the images are all in sequence. All right, continuing on with the new features that were added to Lightroom 9.0. This is another one that could be counted as something that has been asked for a long time, especially if you are a Lightroom desktop user who uses the local mode a lot. If you are, you're going to absolutely love this. All right, so normally, up until now, if you were in Lightroom Local and you had, for example, a folder and it had a bunch of subfolders, you could not see the images of all the subfolders at once. You can click through here to see all of the different images in the child folders, in the lowest level folders. But if you were at this parent folder, you would get this message that the folder has no editable files. But now we have the ability to view photos with subfolders. You can enable it one of 2 ways. The first is this button right here that says include subfolders, or via this switch up here that also says include subfolders. When I flip it on, you can see we start to process, and now I can access all of the images in each of the subfolders from the parent folder. It's one of those small changes that took a while to get here, but I have no doubt that users of Lightroom Local will absolutely love this. It is a big, big improvement. All right, so the last thing I want to cover is an improvement to one of the tools that I use all the time, and that is Gen Remove. And so we've typically provided guidance that to get the best results when using Gen Remove, what you'll want to do is not just make a stroke around the thing that you want to remove, but if it's casting a shadow or a reflection, you also want to select that. Well, with the improvement to Gen Remove now, we will automatically select that reflection or that shadow. And it's really powerful. So let me show you how that works. So you can see here, let's just say I want to remove this lighthouse. I don't know why I would want to, but let's just say I do. Normally, I'd go ahead to remove here. I'd make sure that use generative AI was enabled, and I would make my selection over here. But you'll see how the lighthouse is also casting a reflection, which is something that you would also want to include in your stroke. To make sure that Lightroom does this for you, before you make your stroke, enable the Detect Objects checkbox. I'll go ahead and make a larger brush size. And now what I'm going to do is just select the lighthouse. And when I let go, Lightroom will analyze the selection. And you can see how it automatically selected the entire area here. So it will give me a much cleaner stroke. But it gets even cooler. So check this out. Let me go to this other image here. You can see I have this person, then there is this area over here, and then there is its reflection. So if I go ahead here and I just select the person and the fishing rod, you can see how Lightroom will also make detached selections, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I use this all the time now. All right, I know this was a doozy of a video, but there was a lot to cover. We have a bunch of new features and improvements to existing features, many of which you've been asking for years. So very excited that it's here now. And even though I kind of went over assisted culling, I would say as a broad overview, I will be creating a deep dive video, like I mentioned, so that you can fully understand how this powerful feature works. Now, of course, this is just a small component. Even though there's so much here, there's still so much to Lightroom to understand. And if you want to learn everything there is to know about Lightroom for desktop, for mobile, and for web, please check out my course called Lightroom Everywhere. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Now, I also have this new series called Then and Now, where I edit old photos from like 10, 15 years ago. I've got this here. Also, you can check out this video that YouTube might think you might enjoy. As always, a thumbs up is greatly appreciated, as is clicking on the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified of all future videos. Thanks a lot, everyone.